And we want to start off prayer. So you're unmuted, right? Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right, perfect. So I think this is the perfect time for you to take the mic.
Thank you. It's very special to be here once again and say the memorial prayer for Zeev Jabotinsky. But before I do, I just want to also second what you said, Yifa, which is about Helen. There's a special prayer that we say on Shabbat. V'chol mi she'oskim b'tzorchei tzibur be'emunah, HaKadosh Baruch Hu yishalem scharam. And I know that Helen
I think you froze.
Oh, I wasn't sure if it was me or you. Well, we lost you for a second. Can you repeat that last sentence, please?
My prayer is that Bezrat Hashem Helen has a refuah shlema, and that this event that's being put together for so many years stands her in good stead, and Bezrat Hashem, she should be with us for many years.
Amen, amen.
With that, if you're home, I'd ask you to please rise for a moment for the tefillah, the memorial prayer for Zeev ben Yivno Jabotinsky. Lemolei rachamim shoyechei nevam eroemim hametzeyem menucha nechona etzei lekanefei ha-shechina b'maros kedoshim uteorim kezohar rakia mazirim et nishmat Zeev ben Yivno Jabotinsky she'alach le'olamo bavur she'anachnu mitpalelim beyad askarat nishmato beganei Eden beganei Eden teye menuchato lachein ba'al harachamim yastireu beseyet kenafav leyoel amim veyitzor mitzeror achayim et nishmato Adonai unachalato veyanuchu beshalom al mishkavo venomar amen.
Well, thank you very much. This was beautiful, really beautiful, and I think this opportunity for us to remember Zeev Jabotinsky and his heritage, and his passion and his actions and his legacy is a true honor and an opportunity for us to really kind of understand where we are today and what's our vision about the future. And thank you very much for that. So I have a few words in the name of AFSC, a little bit of an update. So first of all, I know that you're all missing Israel. I'm here on your behalf. We're taking care of the place. But I'm sure that you guys are missing Israel, and Judy and Helen for sure are missing Israel. And the situation with COVID-19 has prevented many people from coming back here to their home in Israel. And so even though there aren't any chizuk missions or a lot of opportunities to come together physically, Thank God we have this technology now that allows us to come together in a virtual way and still have a little bit of these things that are very, very important to all of us. Another thing that was stopped, unfortunately, was AFSC's youth program. So AFSC's youth program was just an amazing, inspiring program for young people here in Israel, but they haven't stopped their activities completely. AFSC has supported this very, very interesting, very important initiative, sponsoring a youth archaeological dig at Oz Vegaon. And I'm sure a lot of you that have been on the Chizuk missions have been to Oz Vegaon many times. And we just want to share a very short clip with you from Israel, from Oz Vegaon, from the youth archaeological dig. So Alicia, if you can please help us with the video.
So, dear Helen and Judy, we are here preparing. The archaeologists will come in a few minutes. Everybody's putting their hats on, and they're eating breakfast. Here they are. We have two Olot Chadashot. We're having a little video here for our friends in America who helped us out here, sponsored this. You're the Olot Chadashot, right? Yeah. Where you live in Efrat? Yeah. And you live? In Neve Daniel. In Neve Daniel. Okay. When did you come on Aliyah?
2 years ago. Like, I'm not in the line.
Okay, but you come from an American family. Fair. Okay, great. So we're all waiting here for the archaeologist, and he's going to tell them what to do. And here's Yehudit. Yehudit, תגידי כמה מילים להלן וג'ודי. רגע, אני בשמש, הפוך.
בוקר טוב, הלן וג'ודי. איזה בוקר נפלא לראות כאן את כל הנוער מתכונן לחפור באדמת ארץ ישראל, למצוא את השורשים, את העבר שלנו, לחשוף אותו, ואף אחד לא יכול להגיד לנו שאנחנו לא היינו כאן. אין עם כזה, אין ארץ כזאת כמו שלנו ששומרת על האוצרות ההיסטוריים של עם ישראל. ובזכותכם היום שני דברים. א', נחשוף את ההיסטוריה של המקום הזה, וב', בעזרת השם נקבל תב"ע, תוכנית בניין ערים למקום הזה. אנחנו מאוד מעריכות מה שאתן עושות למען ארץ ישראל ולמען עוז וגאון בפרט, ובכלל למען תנועת נשים בירוק. אתם מלווים אותנו כבר שנים על גבי שנים, נותנים לנו גיבוי פיזי, גיבוי רוחני שהוא הכי חשוב. לא נשכח לעולם שאתם הייתם הראשונות שהצטרפתם לנושא הזה של הריבונות במלון המלך שלמה, שבאנו בלילה ואתם התלהבתם איתנו. באמת, חברות אמיתית, הליכה אמיתית איתנו כל הדרך, ואנחנו איתכם. תודה לכם על הכל.
I'm just translating quickly. Here, חבר'ה, תגידו לחברים שלנו מאפסי שלום. Shalom, okay, here, dear AFSC, this is the group. Fantastic. And what Yehudit said, I will translate in a separate mail about how there's no other people who looks for their roots like that, and it's we're doing two exciting things here today. Thanks to you, Americans for Safe Israel, Judy, Helen, is not only are we going to teach the youth history, but we're also going to work towards the permits of this place. So thank you, and thank you for incredible friendship. I translated very briefly because one of the archaeologists already arrived, and we're going to start soon.
Well, this is, I always felt that this is truly inspiring because, AFSI or Judy and Helen specifically, they're always looking for some, for some new project, whether it's, security for some of the shuvim, for some of the communities, or it's a archaeological dig, or it's a youth program. They're always thinking outside the box. They're always eager to support some new initiative. I think that really shows the spirit, and it's truly amazing. So let's move on to our first speaker. I'm just not sure, for technological reasons. Yossi, are you on with us? Yossi, are you on with us?
I see him. I'm trying to unmute him.
I'm sorry, what? Yes.
Hear me?
We can hear you now. Oh, great. So you're on. All right, great.
But
So let me say a few words about you before you start. Why not, right?
First of all, can you hear me? You hear me?
Yeah, perfectly. Yes.
Just a moment. Yes. Okay.
Okay. So I would like to say that, I'm very happy, and I think it's a great honor to have you with us. And, today Yossi is the chairman of the Jabutinski Institute in Tel Aviv. And I know a lot of the Chizuk missions have been to the Jabutinski Institute in Tel Aviv. I think it's an amazing and important place. And the tours there are always so informative and so valuable. And Yossi has has an amazing past, from writing books to being being the assistant to the prime minister to being an MK from the Likud and many other good things. And we're very grateful to have you here, Yossi. And the stage is yours. Please share with us a little bit of your wisdom.
Thank you, Yifa. Yifa, I guess.
Yes, Yifa.
Yifa, say. Pardon?
Yifa.
Yifa. And where is Judy? Judy, where is Judy?
Judy had a personal issue today.
Okay. Thank you, Yifa. Thank you for all those who initiated this event to commemorate the 80 years since the passing of our great Zionist leader, Zeev Jabotinsky. As you say, my name is Yossi Ahimeir. I was born in Jerusalem many years ago. Nowadays, I'm a chairman of the Jabutinski Institute in Israel and the editor of a magazine called Ha'uma, The Nations, which belong to another organization, the Jabotinsky Order in Tel Aviv. I'm a journalist in my profession, and I publish once a week an article in Ma'ariv, which is a newspaper in Tel Aviv. I'm speaking to you from my hometown, Ramat Gan, where there are, in my home, in the first floor, a small museum to commemorate the memory of my late father, Dr. Abba Ahimeir. It's called Beit Abba, who was a great friend of Jabotinsky, worked side by side with him, and who was the only one whom Jabotinsky called our teacher and mentor about my late father. So thank you for the initiative and for the organization and for my invitation. I hope it will be an interesting event. For the memory of one of, as I said, one of the great leaders, Zionist leaders, one of the great Jewish persons in the 18th century. I agree with all what you say about your organization, AFSC, American for a Safe Israel. I know this organization. I remember the founder of the organization, the late Herbert Zweibon, who visited our museum, our institute in Tel Aviv, and who organized many events for the memory of Jabotinsky. And I hope that your organization will succeed in being an influential organ among the Jewish community in the United States, more than it is right now. As we say, this event is arranged now. Today is August the 3rd, exactly 80 years since the passing promptly of Zeev Jabotinsky in the state of New York, in Beitar camp near the town of Hunter. It shocked the whole Jewish world. Is passing away at the age of less than 60 years old. And he left behind him a huge heritage, Zionist, spiritual, traditional heritage in his writing, in his speeches, in his letters, in his activity. We think that his heart broken because of what he heard the news coming from Europe. You know, 1940, it's the beginning, the Second World War has begun already, and the Shoah has begun. And he knew the situation of the Jewish people on the European land, on European countries in Eastern Europe, especially in the USSR, in Russia. And he was unable to do anything in that point of time. But during the 30s, he called the Jews. He called from his heart, please save yourself. We are expecting Churban, that is his word. Churban, destroying of all your life, all your institute, everything, all Jewish life in Europe because of the Nazi regime that's rising in Germany. But unfortunately, only few were able to leave Europe or wanted to leave Europe to Eretz Israel or to America. And we know that 6 million Jews perished in this terrible event, the Shoah. He didn't live to watch and to see the Shoah, which he predicted, but his heart, as I told you, it was broken because he knew what is going to be held, what's going to come in the few months, in the few years to come during the Second World War. And he was buried in New York, in Montefiore Cemetery, and only 24 years after his death, I mean in 1964, this is the Jewish state has already existed, has already been established by the command of the Prime Minister Levi Eshkol. He fulfilled Jabotinsky will to be buried in Eretz Israel by the command of the Jewish government, that he was sure that it will come, it will be true. And his coffin and his wife, coffin, Johanna, were transferred from United States to Mount Herzl, to Jerusalem. And I always say that if he could see from where is eternal rest in the harbor of Jerusalem, if he could see, open the tombstone and look around and see what is going on around, he was very satisfied to see a Jewish state as he dreamed of, with government, with democracy, with army, with power, with so many achievements in all areas. And now we know today that there are many, many problems all over the world because of the coronavirus, but especially in Israel. And you were aware about the demonstration about unsatisfaction from a part of the public. The Jewish state in its 73 years of its existence is flourishing, and is the fulfillment of his vision. In the United States, in the last months of his activity, last months of his life, he dedicated all his effort to establish a Jewish army that will join the Allies to fight against the German Nazis and to stop them from fulfilling their terrible plan to occupy Europe, to liquidate the Jewish life in Europe. And he did it in the same pattern that he did in the First World War. You know that in 1915, he established or initiated the Jewish legions that fought side by side by the British to conquer Eretz Israel, to liberate it during the First World War from the Turkish or the Ottoman power that were controlled the Middle East for 400 years. He did it for I would say because of two reasons. First of all, he wanted to prove to ourselves, to the Jewish people, that we can wear uniforms, that we can hold weapons, that we can fight. The Jewish youngsters, the Jewish people can fight, can show that their ability to fight and to achieve their goals if it's needed by military means. And the second reason is that if the Jewish Legion will fight by the British army, by General Allenby, who conquered the Eretz Israel, it will be easier for us to claim our right to become a reality through establishing of a Jewish state in our homeland, in Eretz Israel. In 1917, you know, the British gave us the Balfour Declaration. In 1920, in San Remo, the powers again reiterated the idea of establishing a Jewish state, a Jewish homeland in Eretz Israel. And in 1922, the British got the mandate for the Palestine, for Eretz Israel. And the main goal was, as I say, to establish a Jewish state in our lands. And we know from, by looking backward, we know that the British were not stick to their commitment according to the international law to establish that Jewish state, and they did everything to not let the Jewish to establish their independence. And so we were forced to take military means in order to achieve this goal. Jabotinsky was very believed in the British justice, and as a diplomat, he was a statesman, he was a diplomat. He used to come to London, to other capitals, in order to talk about our right, about fulfilling the commitment of the peoples of the world, of the British. And this is one side of his activity in those days. I mean, in the 20s, in the 30s of the 20th century. And on the other one, he let his people in Eretz Israel to be active in military means to force the British and to push back the Arabs here in order to achieve this goal. I would say that Jabotinsky was the father of the renewal Jewish army, Jewish military in the new epoch, in our times. He was not militarist, he was against militarism, but he said that military, army, power, it's important sometimes to achieve the goals. It's not a means, it's not a goal for itself, militarism. It's a means to achieve our goals and to liberate our country. So for this goal, he also dedicates, he was a teacher, a mentor, as an orator. He occupied the hearts of the youth, millions of thousands of youth, Jewish youth in Eastern Europe, in his speeches, in his meetings with them. And he teaches them about, first of all, about Zionism, about the need to live their places in Europe and to come to Israel to share and to support those who are fighting and active in the fight for the Zionist goal. And for this goal, he, as you know, maybe established in 1923 the youth movement Beitar. Brit, this is the initials of Brit Yosef Trumpeldor. Trumpeldor was his partner in establishing the Jewish Legion in the First World War, and Jabotinsky admired him very much. He admired him especially after he fell in the fighting in Tel Hai in 1920, exactly 100 years ago. And in the same way, Jabotinsky arranged the defending of Jerusalem against the Arab terrorists in the same year, 1920, and he was arrested by the British that were not satisfied with his independent activities in this regard. He was jailed in Akko, but he was released after 3 months of sitting in the prison. And as I said, in 1923, he established in Riga, Latvia, the youth movement of Beitar. He considered Beitar as the future army or the future pattern of army to come and to liberate the country and to defend the country. And he drew the whole character of the movement, about its uniform, about its all its activities and its education. I'm sure that Ofir will tell you more about it later on, because she is a great Beitaria. If she is here, I'm sure that she is on the Zoom now. And in the same year, in 1923, he published one of his most important or most well-known article, Iron Wall. What does it mean, Iron Wall? Iron Wall means that we will have iron. Iron means weapon, and iron means power. And we need to establish Iron Wall in Eretz Israel in order to show our opponents, the British on the one side, the Arabs on the other side, and others, that they can't enter this wall, which means, as I say, power, weapon, people holding weapons. And he hoped that when the Arabs, especially the Arabs, will understand that they can't break this iron, maybe they will understand that the Jewish here are to live forever, and maybe they will accept the coexistence between us and them. The Iron Wall is also spiritual. We the Jewish youth.
Forgive me, I just need to tell you that there's like 2-3 minutes, and then we'll have more time for questions. So just to let you know that...
how much time I have?
About 2-3 more minutes, if that's okay with you.
That's all. I just in 1923, no, and we have 77 years more to talk about. Anyway, if I will sum up, Jabotinsky was a teacher, was a leader, was a author. He wrote many books and stories. He was a great author in Russian language. Now he spoke 10 languages and wrote in 10 languages. And he was a poet also. And we in the Jabotinsky Institute, you know, we are, our ticket is to concentrate and to distribute his legacy and his writings, because we believe that his inspiration, his legacy are very relevant, very actual for the Jewish life in Israel and abroad. And I would say that his dream was that all Jewish or more of the Jewish people will be gathered in their homeland in Eretz Israel. We have now 7 million Jews in our state, in state of Israel. We have 9 million population. He dreamed about a state that will be stretched from the sea to the desert, to both sides of the banks of the river. And he was a national liberal. He believed in equality to everyone in the state or in the Jewish state, whether a Jew or a non-Jew. He believed in equality to women, he believed in the freedom of speech, and many of his ideas are very, very relevant and very, very important. And you can get all these ideas in more details by entering the Machon Jabotinsky, Jabotinsky Institute internet our website. And I would like to show you a book that will be helpful. It is a book in English that show selected writings of Jabotinsky in alphabetical order that will help you to find every item from his legacy, heritage, and to know and to learn. So this is my previous remarks. Thank you.
I think you just, created, if people needed more passion and more desire to come visit the Jabotinsky Institute, I'm sure now they have more of that. And there's so much to say, right? I mean, we can talk forever about his life and his action. It's just amazing. So thank you for that. And we'll go on to questions in a little bit. I want to turn to our next guest, Ofir Dayan. Ofir, thank you very much for coming here and being with us. Just a few words about you. I mean, I think you were born an activist. You're one of those people that were born an activist. More or less, right? I mean, you grew up in a family of very passionate Zionists and very much involved in the tradition of the Beitar movement specifically. And your family and you have moved to the United States a few years back after, of course, you've completed a very distinguished army service in the IDF. And then you graduated from the University of New York while becoming the president.
Still a student, but okay, thank you.
I thought you were now your master's degree, no?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you see, with us Israelis, it's I finished and now I'm doing this other thing. So the stage is yours. Thanks so much. Looking forward to hearing you.
Thank you, Yifa. Thank you, AFSC, for having me, for having this incredible event. I just want to say a few words before I begin. First of all, I'm really excited to be here. I'm a 5th generation in Beitar from both sides of my family, so it really runs in the blood. It's a huge part of my life. As you can probably see, I'm wearing the Beitar uniform. It has been a long time since I had an opportunity to wear this shirt, so I'm really, really happy that you gave me this opportunity. I really appreciate it. And now I want to say a few brief remarks about Jabotinsky. Look, I'm currently the president of Students Supporting Israel at Columbia University. Columbia is one of the most anti-Israeli universities in the United States and perhaps in the world. And to me, when I think about what I do at Columbia, about why I do what I do at Columbia, and it's not an easy task. I get cursed and called names and threatened on a weekly basis. And whenever I need to think about why I'm doing what I'm doing, Jabotinsky is always one of the main reasons I'm doing this. I grew up in Beitar, as I said earlier. I joined Beitar when I was 6 years old. And I did every possible role in Beitar. I was an instructor, I was a head of branch. Before my army service, I actually postponed my military service in a year to be a full-time volunteer for a year in Beitar. And there is one quote from Jabotinsky that really, I think, encapsulates everything that I feel about what I do right now. He said that the youth, although I'm no longer youth anymore, I'm 26, but the youth are the driving force behind society. And to me, when I think of Colombia and about similar places, I see the role of us, of the youth, not necessarily youth as, teenagers, but the young people, to change their reality. And to me, this is a life mission, and it's a life mission inspired by Jabotinsky. When I was thinking about what to say in this special evening, I thought about it a lot. And since I moved to New York 3 years ago, I had the immense privilege of visiting Montefiore Cemetery and seeing the first resting place of Jabotinsky. And recently, just a month and a half ago, my father and I drove all the way up to Hunter, to try and locate where was the Beitar camp in which Jabotinsky passed away. I am sure you all know, and it's a great shame that nobody ever marked the specific place, so there is no place you can pinpoint. But it was important for me to go there. And when I was thinking about this event and what should I say here, I had this thought that it might be a bit weird to say something like that about myself, but I'm pretty sure that if Jabotinsky is now looking at us from above and seeing that in the year 2020, there's a 26-year-old individual who can sit here and quote his writings and sing the Beitar song and knows Shir HaNeder, the vow, the Beitar vow by heart, I think he would be pretty happy. And I think the best thing and the best way we can commemorate Jabotinsky and the best way we can pay respect to really the person who, to me, is one of the great Jews of all times, is to think about how relevant the things he said are in our lifetime. Sometimes, great people say great things, but they're only relevant to the decade in which they were said in, maybe, 100 years after they've been said. But there are things that Jabotinsky said that, to me, are still relevant in 2020 and can keep being relevant forever. One of them, Yossi mentioned earlier, Kira Barzel, the Iron Wall, this notion that the Jewish state should be so strong, but not just militarily, as Yossi said, also culturally and economically, and in all ways, shapes and forms. So all the other nations would not even, and specifically our Arab neighbors, would not even think of threatening us. But now I want to turn into something less. Less security oriented, although I do study, my master's is in security policy. I think in this time when COVID-19 is, spreading outside, I think there is something that Jabotinsky said that is so relevant today, and we see it all over the world. The 5 M's. In English, it's not really M's. In Hebrew, it is. It's marpeh, more, mazon, ma'on, v'malbosh. It's the 5 things, and believe me, I'm a staunch capitalist. My dad even calls me a pig sometimes because I'm so capitalist. But these are the 5 things that Jabotinsky said that every state should provide their citizens. It's medical care, education, clothing, food, and residence. And obviously it's not for everyone, it's for those who cannot afford it. So they can live lead dignified lives. And I think now when we see COVID-19 out there, and we see so many people struggling to pay their medical bills, or even to have somewhere to stay overnight. They don't have residence. They don't have enough money to buy food. I think this is the time where we see how relevant the things that Jabotinsky said are to our life. And I'm going to quickly just mention one other thing. To me, one of the most important topics that Jabotinsky spoke about is equality. And I know it's surprising because, you know, in these years, he wasn't so conventional, but he spoke a lot about women's equality, about minorities. You know, he called one of the most beautiful quotes of Jabotinsky is that he described women as souls that are comprised from silk and steel, that are so gentle, but at the same time so fierce, and, you know, pardon my French, but so badass. And I think this is exactly the kind of, you know, female leadership that we need to see today. And I'm just going to conclude by saying that I really, really hope that I can be this kind of woman that Jabotinsky was describing, and that I could be this kind of woman who can lead these kind of changes at Columbia, but also, you know, back home in Israel or wherever I might be. Thank you so much.
Oh, Ofir, thank you very much. That was great. All right, so we have time for questions now, and this is the time for you to click away. I've seen a couple of questions already here in the chat. So first question from Leon, and he's asking, Yossi is asking you, many Jews worldwide claim to support the work of Jabotinsky. Why do you think they don't adhere to the following statement? And I guess he's referring to one of the statements that you've made.
Which statement?
Leon, if you want to write to us which statement oh, maybe that was it. Better to have a gun and not need it than to need it and not have it.
Again, please again.
Better to have a gun and not need it than to need it and not have it.
Oh yes, it's a general saying. It's not pertain especially to Jabotinsky. This is a translation of the concept of iron wall. If you have weapon, if you have power, so you can push, you can prevent your enemy from thinking about attacking you. This is the belief. So better have a gun and don't use it than use it without goal. We in Israel assume this saying. We have a strong army, one of the strongest army, not only in the Middle East, but in the world as a whole. And on the one hand, and we have a robust state from the economical and all other things point of view. And we are here to live forever and to build our future and our security. And we do it, I think, until now, not bad at all.
There's an interesting question. Okay. Since the 8th century in China, every instance where paper money was adopted, the paper money collapsed. A transformation to a totalitarian regime followed in almost every instant, especially during the last 200 years. A great amount of anti-Semitism has focused on the role of Jews in what are fraudulent monetary systems. Did Jabotinsky express a position about money that is consistent with Jewish law to act against paper money? Larry Parks is asking.
Well, if I understood the idea of the questions, it means, you know, the Jabotinsky, we published in the Jabotinsky Institute a very important research about Jabotinsky and anti-Semitism, because Jabotinsky foster the idea that we have to change our state of life in the diaspora. This is part of the answer to the anti-Semitic. We have to leave the places where we were attacked anti-Semitically, and you are aware about it even in the United States. And we have our life in independence in Israel, in Eretz Israel. But he claimed that there is anti-Semitism of the circumstances, the fact that we live among, as a minorities, among the Gentiles, among the majority of non-Jews all over the world, and the anti-Semitics of matters like as you describe in the questions. I think that Israel is the answer to all the anti-Semitism in his days and nowadays, and you in New York, in America, you can rely upon Israel, and you know that you have Israel as a second home for you. You are always most invited to come and to live with us, not only because of the coronavirus. And the anti-Semitism is an illness. It's an illness not of the Jewish, but the Gentiles, the Christians, the Muslims. There is a huge anti-Semitism, very severe anti-Semitism thriving in the Muslim countries, you know, in the Muslim countries. Every day I can read anti-Semitic propaganda against Jews, against Israel, but time has changed since the times of Jabotinsky. Jabotinsky would be glad to see Israel as an answer to anti-Semitism.
Yeah, I have to add that unfortunately we're not only seeing anti-Semitism coming from the Gentiles. There's always a group of Jews that are, you know,
from inside.
Yeah, bigger haters than, you know, I always say, because we do a lot of legal proceedings around the world, I always say that it's shocking to me that every time, doesn't matter what we do, there's always a Jew representing the other side. So I don't know, I guess maybe that's a problem that we somehow have to deal with.
If your organization will be stronger, and your impact and your answer to the anti-Semitism that you describe right now will be most effective, more effective.
So let me ask you both. There's a general question, I guess. So they want to know what you feel about it. But do you fear that the Holocaust might happen again?
It's nobody can predict what will be in the future, but the difference nowadays between nowadays and the terrible days of the 30s is quite great, and the risk of the anti-Semitism is rising. But the very fact that we have a state, weapons, everything, this is the answer. This is the answer. I don't believe that anti-Semitism, that an event like Holocaust can occur once again. It was once event in all history of the Jewish history, of world history. It can't happen, but you know, from time to time there are events very dangerous, very cruel, but not like the Holocaust. But who knows? Who knows? We can be happy that we have a Jewish state and a Jewish independence life in our homeland. This is the great thing that we have. This is the great difference between nowadays and those terrible days. Jabotinsky's days.
I'm going to respectfully disagree with Yossi. I think that unfortunately it can happen again. And I think that we need to take a step back and look not only at Jews, I think it can happen again. I think it's on the way to happening again as we speak in China. If you follow world news, you see that more than 1 million Uyghurs are locked up in camps in China, being re-educated, the same terms that were used in the Holocaust. I am not one to make this comparison lightly. Whenever someone makes this comparison to the Holocaust, I am very much against it. But a few days ago, a video surfaced a few weeks ago of Uyghurs, thousands of them being in a lack of a better term, shoved into trains and led to the unknown. And it made some Twitter rage for a few days, and that's it. I think that if we take a step back and look not just at the Jewish people, I think it can definitely happen again. And I think the world has not learned a lesson from the Holocaust, unfortunately. And the Jews who have paid the ultimate price for bigotry and for racism and for hate and for anti-Semitism, I think the world has not learned the lessons from this immense price that we paid. And I think for us as Jews, and I recently wrote an op-ed in Israel Hayom, in the newspaper I write in, and I wrote about this issue, and I think that if we want to make sure that never again is not a void statement, but a very meaningful one, if we really mean never again, we should speak up. And I think no Jew can be silent when we see things like what is happening currently in China. And I know this is not the topic of this conversation, but I really urge you all to really Google and do some research about that, because it's a very important topic.
Oh, thank you, Ofir. Yeah, I agree with you. I follow that very closely, and it's beyond tragic. It's beyond tragic. There's a very specific question that I think you're the best person to answer. Ofir, Federica is asking, what is the Beitar group doing at Columbia, and how successful have you been? And generally, just saying kol hakavod for everything, for all of your efforts.
First of all, thank you very much. Second of all, the group at Columbia is not Beitar. I personally was brought up in Beitar. I get inspired immensely by the values that I inherited from Beitar. The group at Columbia is a group called Students Supporting Israel. It's a movement with 50 chapters, now 60. It used to be, even Yifa doesn't know that, although she's a great friend of SSI. It used to be only at North America, but now we expanded. We just opened this week 10 chapters in Argentina. So now there are 60 chapters, and we are a movement, and what defines us is that we are unapologetic, but really unapologetic. I mean, so for example, if the Jewish community is silent when Apartheid Week comes to campuses across the US, Students Supporting Israel is the only movement that puts up a huge display in front of the so-called apartheid wall that they put up to show the true story of Israel. We are the only ones who are reclaiming the story of the Jews, the story of Zionism, and that's our goal. I'm going to say that when all the other movements are okay with, womanizers telling the story of women's rights, SSI, Students Supporting Israel, is the only one who is saying, no, women should be telling the story of women. Zionists should be telling the story of Zionism, not anti-Zionists, not anti-Semites, although they are the same. These are not the people who should be telling the story, and this is what we do. The accomplishment that we had at Columbia are great. Look, Columbia is not an easy battleground. I see my friends from other chapters. For example, I'm going to give a shout out to the chapter in Texas A&M, who managed to pass a legislation in student government, a very pro-Israel legislation that I could only dream of. This is not the kind of things that we are able to do at Columbia, but we managed to be involved with the new program that Columbia started with a joint program with Tel Aviv University, a joint degree program, and the fact that we have been invited to talk about that, that's a huge accomplishment. We have staged numerous protests at Columbia, and I'm just, I don't want to speak too long. I'm just going to give one example that I thought was very, very meaningful. Colombia, as some of you may know, has a very bad record of hosting anti-Semites on campus. People like Mahmoud Ahmadinejad while he was president of Iran. And last year, Colombia decided to host Dr. Mahathir Mohamad. He is the Prime Minister of Malaysia, who defined himself on his blog as a proud anti-Semite. And we said, you know what? We're not going to let it go by without a fight. And Colombia was just okay with inviting him. We sent a very strong letter to the president of the university, who, and in this letter, we demanded that if he doesn't cancel the event, that at least the person who is moderating the event, the professor who is introducing Dr. Muhammad, would call him out on his anti-Semitism on stage. And without our letter, I don't think it would have been done. And not only that the professor who introduced him said, you know what, we are hosting this person, but just so you know, this person is a loud anti-Semite, which for us was a great win, but we did not stop there. We went into the lecture hall and we put a pamphlet with all these anti-Semitic statements on each and every single chair in the room. So each person sitting there would understand what kind of horrible human being they're listening to. And I think this made a huge difference. And this is some of the wins that we're having at Columbia. It's not an easy fight. It's not, you know, heroic wins. It's not Rambo style, you know, going, you know, partying and, you know, having great successes. But these are the things that, you know, I think really set us apart from the pack. And I think we are very loud and proud. And I think Yifa can attest to that because, again, she is a great friend of our movement. And these are all things that I learned just, you know, from Beital, where activism is such a huge component, and where, you know, in the Beital song they say "Ki sheket hu refesh," being silent is a disgrace. So this is the things that I brought with me in my tool bag to Columbia.
That's really great, and I've been following what you've done with this is, you know, to take the initiative. I know how hard it is. I know how hostile the environment is. I know, you know, to produce something in such a short amount of time and make it effective is an amazing project, and kol hakavod for that. I'm gonna try to mix and match like 3 different questions that all kind of wanted to deal with today's MKs in Israel, in the Israeli Knesset. I assume they mean from Likud or more from the right-wing parties. And, you know, people are asking, you know, more or less, and I'm combining a few of these questions and remarks. What do you think, you know, both of you think that Zeev Jabotinsky would think today, looking at the Knesset members today and how far, at least according to our viewers, they have strayed from the Jabotinsky way in terms of protecting the land of Israel, or generally, what would you think, you know, today's MKs are really representing in terms of Jabotinsky's vision?
Well, you know that, as you know, Jabotinsky passed away 8 years before the establishment of the state of Israel, and we view nowadays not too positive phenomena in the Israeli politics. Israel is a pure democracy. I would say it's the only democracy in the Middle East among all the states around us. And this is the fulfillment of Jabotinsky visions. So first of all, we are democracy, and we will remain a democratic state. Once a year, the Knesset dedicate a plenum to commemorate Jabotinsky according to the law that the Knesset acted in 2005, which means Jabotinsky law to commemorate his memory and his activity and his personality. And you know that every speaker, there are always 4 or 5 speakers in this plenum, this special event in the Knesset, and everyone finds in Jabotinsky what he wants. It can be a leftist speaker, or from the right, from the Likud, or from the Kahol Lavan. So everyone and his own Jabotinsky. That means that Jabotinsky was a world of thoughts, of ideas, but mainly, of course, the Likud parties claim that they are followers, pure, great followers of Jabotinsky legacy, though not most of the members of the Knesset from the Likud read something of about from Jabotinsky. We try to convince them to read, to learn, to cite from his writings, and it's not always easy. But Jabotinsky nowadays is something, a national figure, I would say. This is our goal in Jabotinsky Institute, to present Jabotinsky as a world of ideas, of Jewish ideas, of Zionist ideas. And I think that most of his ideas, one, are felt in everyday life in Israel, in the economy, in the society, in the security, in the policy. Most of the ideas are Jabotinsky's.
Amazing. Ofir, do you have anything to add to that? I think this is a question that was occupying a lot of people's mind.
I think it was a great summary. I think it was a great summary. I wish they were more, you know, well-versed in Jabotinsky's writing, and I wish they would sometimes behave with more hadar. The way Jabotinsky described, you know, being more dignified and regal. I don't know, there is no word in English other than, you know, to describe this, but with more respect. But, you know, other than that, I think Yossi hit the nail.
So there's another more specific question about this, and it goes to the application of Israeli law to Judea and Samaria. And I guess, you know, we would like to hear your thoughts on that, given, you know, Jabotinsky's vision and situation currently today.
I'm going to surprise you all. I think that if Jabotinsky was alive today, he would have some reservations about applying law, as some of the Israeli representatives are thinking about it. I 100% think he would be in favor, you know, 2 banks of the Jordan River. It's way more than applying sovereignty to Judea and Samaria. It would be, you know, look at this site right here. It's all over 2 banks of the Jordan River. But at the same time, Jabotinsky cared about equality. He talked about the Christian, the Arab, and my son living in peace and equality. And I doubt that he would be okay, for example, with plans like applying sovereignty over Palestinian cities without granting citizenship to Palestinians. I do think, however, he would be in favor of a plan like the Peace Trump plan, the Trump peace plan, in which, you know, applying sovereignty only on Israeli cities and towns and communities, in which no Palestinian is coming under the fold of Israel without being granted citizenship. So I think in terms of President Trump's plan, I think Jabotinsky would definitely be in favor of that. And I think that, I know Yossi said, you know, policy in Israel is very reflective of Jabotinsky's ideas. In terms of sovereignty, I wish it would be more reflective of Jabotinsky's ideas. I think we wasted a lot of time with a very, very pro-Israel president and White House staff. And we wasted a lot of time in which we could have applied sovereignty. And I'm even going to take it one step further. And I think that because of COVID and because the world is so busy doing other things and addressing different issues, we could have done that and suffer less of a cost, of an international cost. And we are kind of wasting our time now. I think we can see all over the world that nations are doing things that are unacceptable to other nations and are not paying as much of a price, and we could have done that. And instead of that, we only spoke about sovereignty without applying it, so we paid full price but got no goods. which is.
All right, so I think we have one last question. Yossi, I think this one is for you. This is interesting. I have a good answer for that. But yesterday was the 30-year anniversary of Iraq's invasion of Kuwait. Arafat alienated most of the Arab world by supporting Saddam. Ask him, I guess that's you, Yossi, if the radical Palestinians get more sympathy in the West than they get from their fellow Arabs.
Well, you know that 30 years ago, I was the chief bureau of Prime Minister Shamir, who decided not to react about the missile that Saddam launches on Israel. And he was relying upon the support of President George Bush administration, and he got that support. Though there were very strong differences of opinion between the Americans' government in those days and the Israeli government, the Shamir's government. And still we have the problem with, of course, the Palestinians were very glad for the missiles that were launched, that were sent on Israeli cities. To our luck, nobody was killed. And nowadays we still have the same problem with the Palestinian inside the territories and outside the territories. You know, we have the problem with Gaza Strip, with terrorist organization like Hamas, which foster not only missiles on Israel, but only anti-Semitic missiles. And of course, we have in the north the Hezbollah, which connected with the Iranian regime. The Iran themselves menace Israel by, you know, missiles of their own. But we have the answer. I can assure you that we have answer to all our enemies. And about what we have to strengthen is, of course, our asbara, our putting our case in the West, in America. Nobody, not all leaders in America and in Europe understand our case, understand that we are not occupiers in our countries. This is our country. They don't understand our connections with all the sites and places from the Bible, which are emotionally we are connected with, and they don't understand our opposition to establishing a Palestinian state inside Eretz Israel, in the hub of Eretz Israel. We believe that there are many, many Arab states, and there is only one Jewish state, and that this state has to control all the territories between the sea, the Mediterranean Sea, and the river of Jordan. And about the Palestinians who live with us, I don't speak about the Israeli Arabs who are with fully rights are citizens of Israel. I speak about the Palestinian in Judea and Samaria. They will get an autonomy. This is what we have. This is the utmost suggestion that we can give them. They will have autonomy to fulfill, to handle all our daily life. Of course, Israel will control the security and the foreign matters of these territories, but there will not be another Arab state inside Eretz Israel. There will be only autonomy. And you have to understand that autonomy is a great achievement for the Palestinian. Never the Palestinian, they call themselves Palestinians because Palestine, but never they have an independent state. They never aspire for independence under Egyptian, under Jordanian, under Syrian control. Only since 1967, they ask for independence and to control these territories. We understand that such a state, if it will be established, I'm sure it will not be established, it will be a risk for the Israel and for the whole region. So people in the West and among Jewish, as you say, democratic Jewish, those who support the democratics and the left in the United States and Israel and everywhere, have to understand that it's not a question of Palestinian rights, it's a question of the future of Israel. We can't afford a Palestinian, another Arab states 15 miles from the shores of the Mediterranean. It's unbelievable. And you have to understand that in 67, these borders of 67 invited a war against Israel in order to liquidate it. We can't turn back to these borders, and we can't allow a Palestinian state within Eretz Israel, where our holy sites, the Jewish holy sites from the Bible, from our legacy, we are connected with. We can afford only an autonomy. This is the idea of Jabotinsky. This is the idea of Menachem Begin. This was the idea of Yitzhak Shamir. And I'm sure that this is the idea of a name that was not mentioned during this meeting, Benjamin Netanyahu.
Yeah. Well, I want to add something with your permission, just a sentence. I think that, that I've been dealing with, what I've learned is runs the world, which is really what is referred to as realpolitik, and not real values. People tend to look out for their own, and I think we're seeing this now with the Corona crisis more than ever, and you see all the borders closing in Europe. And so I think also in the Middle East, where the Palestinian cause became very, very popular, but understanding it from a realpolitik point of view, you understand that this was a very significant battling tool. This was a bargaining chip for the Arab states against Israel, and it took many forms over the years. And so if you want to look at what is going on now, then you can also understand that in that context, because once it's not worthwhile supporting the Palestinian cause anymore, because they need the American support or even the Israeli support battling against a bigger problem, which is Iran, then all of a sudden all the interests kind of shift. And maybe this is something that I can leave you with, which is a little bit of optimism for a better future, not necessarily because the Arabs have become Zionists all of a sudden, but just because we were smart enough or somehow lucky enough to finally be aligned differently with the interests of the region, at least to an extent, with some of the countries. So that is my view about the Palestinians and Kuwait and the whole situation in a nutshell. I want to thank everybody for coming and attending. I want to send my regards and refuah shlema and our love to Judy and Helen. I want to thank everybody. I recognize a lot of familiar faces, and I hope to see everybody soon back in Israel, or when I'm back in the States sometime soon. And I want to thank from the bottom of my heart to our two great guests today for being with us and sharing their knowledge and spending this time with us. So Yossi, Ahimeir, thank you very much. And again, I would like to urge everybody to go back to the Jabutinski Center when you're in Israel, when you're in Tel Aviv. It's not just a beautiful beach. We also have amazing museums and important institutions. So we must go and support them. And of course, Ofir, Dayan, you're great, you're amazing. She's only 26, just imagine what she can do. It's always great to see you. It's always great to have you with us. We'll end with the Beitar song, the Beitar anthem. I think this is a perfect way to end this this great program. And again, thank you everybody for joining us, and I hope to see everyone soon. All right. Thank you very much, everybody. להתראות, שלום.
Shalom.